decent range coming out of the Dow, only to finish relatively flat, up just a little bit. But looking over at the NASDAQ, we had that dip towards the early part of the afternoon, right around noontime. And then the index actually took off to the upside. A nice performance yesterday. It had about a 100-point range. Finished the day up about 70 or so points. Now, what was really driving that? Semiconductors. You look at across and you see all the various names that were really driving things, and the semis really close to all-time highs once again. But it was Intel, it was AMD, it was NVIDIA, it was Micron, it was Xilinx. All of those names moving to the upside and powering the chips as they were moving, as well as take a look at the tech names themselves. The XLK, absolutely on fire. Another new high, and it just continues. And, you know, people talked about the pause. Well, there was a pause. It wasn't necessarily even a pullback. It was more of a pause. And we have now watched as we've seen this progression to the upside out of many of those various names. Apple, Amazon, Facebook, all having a really good week, and a very good day yesterday, but a really good week. Now, broadly, we had, you look over at Ford. That's been a name that has been on fire this week. We've talked about all the different volumes that have been hitting in there. Let me just give you a little idea. So just this week, we had 70,000 calls being bought on the Feb 12s, 23,000 of the January 11.5s, 18,000 of the February 12.5s, 5,000 of the February 14 calls. Very, very active. As a matter of fact, even though it wasn't the most active yesterday, it was just behind Apple. Apple traded about 1.9 million contracts. 1.7 million contracts were trading in Ford. It's only about 800% above the daily average. So to give you a little perspective on how active it really has been. And as I just want to qualify something, a lot of spreads as well. So not everything is a call buy. We are seeing spreads. We are seeing a buyer here, a selling here, rolling up and out and all that kind of thing. All kinds of different ways to attack, but looking generally for more upside coming from there. GM had that nice pop, but it actually did drop and it pulled back after a really nice new high as well. So continue to see paper there as well. Volumes, 40 million contracts yesterday again, and we're talking about this week, an amazing number. We just continually pounded it last year, the 2020, what the volumes really looked like. And then we got into the pandemic and the volumes didn't fall off. They absolutely exploded even more so to the upside, and that continued all the way up and through into December. December, a monstrous month. January already turning into a monstrous month. We're talking about averaging about 39 million contracts per day in January. It gives you a little bit of an idea of where the action is. You always want to be where the action is, of course, and the derivatives markets is exactly where that is. By the way, look over at the volatility index and you can see that yesterday on the close, we were at the lowest levels that we have been since February, pre-pandemic February of 2020. So 21, call it 20, very low 21s yesterday. A little bit of a pop today. As a matter of fact, we see a pretty decent pop today. Got up near 24, not quite 24, but near that number, and then pulled back. And it was a very rapid pullback, back underneath 22. So we're seeing that volatility, that movement, and one of the things that we are seeing again is that disconnect a little bit still. As you're looking at the Dow today, that's down about 200 points, hasn't really had a lot of movement, still down somewhere close to that level. We watched as the NASDAQ early on was down about 60 points, actually recovered off of that. It was hanging around flat. Now a little bit of pressure coming for the NASDAQ as well. Now, what's part of what's really pushing things around a little bit is some disappointing earnings. And if you take a look at IBM, you take a look at Intel, you take a look at a couple of these various names, and you're going to say to yourself, wow, we are seeing a little bit of a push to the downside. Seagate is another one of those names. A little bit of a surprise from some of these. They're missing on revenue and so forth. And I think the earnings season, as we've gotten through the financials and now we're going to start getting more and more into the tech world, it'll be interesting to see what sort of numbers we hear. As a matter of fact, yesterday, part of the reason for the movement in Apple, a really strong move to the upside in Apple, was Katie Huberty. We talked about that yesterday, but that was something where she was analyzing how things look for the quarter, particularly the holidays and December itself. So energy today, definitely a pull. Materials, a pull on the market. So it's been working like that though, folks. If you look at it, it has not been in a straight line for energy, materials, industrials moving to the upside. but they've consistently had more move to the upside than the downside. All you've got to do is look at some of those various indices and you can see what I'm talking about. You can even pull out some of those names that we talk about, the beta names in energy all the time, the explosive moves that they've made. It hasn't been straight up. They've exploded, but then they've pulled back a little, exploded, and that movement has been very, very true for quite some time. So I talked about Ford and all the incredible option activity we had seen in there. Another name in the energy or in that same space, but in the EV space, I got some unusual for you. How about NIO? NIO trading about $59, just a little bit above $59 a share, and some monstrous buyers of next Friday, the 29th, next Friday expiring calls. About 9,000 of the 62 calls. Now, like I said, stock trading around 59 and a quarter. They're buying the 62 calls. 9,000 of those, average price around $1.50. And we've been seeing paper in there for a really long time. We've continued to see these flows, and this one definitely stood out for me early on. Teva is another name where we have seen. Matter of fact, it's hit on 4 different occasions already in the month of January. But we're looking at that name as it's trading right around $12 a share. And they are buying the January 29, again, expiring. So next Friday, expiring about 7,000 of the 13 calls. So if the stock can move anywhere close to 13, $12 where it is now, move towards 13. Those options actually, 7,000 of those, they're about 10 cents. So risk reward wise, they're a little bit easier sometimes to look at some of those types of things than when we're talking about NVIDIA or we're talking about Apple, we're talking about Microsoft, some of the rest of those. By the way, yesterday, a one-day trade in Microsoft, absolutely extraordinary. They were buying today's expiring calls at the 225 strike. The stock was trading just below that when they started buying that, and very large buying. I think if I recall correctly, it was around 25,000. And that movement that you're seeing today out of Microsoft to the upside. So that's part of what's been helping out, at least sort of even out what we're seeing right now in the NASDAQ, because we are seeing a little bit of a pullback from the SMH, those chip stocks, and we are seeing a little bit of a pullback from other names in the tech space as well that's sort of pulling on the NASDAQ. Folks, have a great weekend. Have a great, but by the way, before we get out of here, let me just tell you this. Some great football in front of us this weekend. Really exciting. Green Bay hosting. That's going to be really interesting. If the weather looks like it looks right now, what we're talking about is really cold, and we're looking at some snow Saturday night here in Minnesota that's obviously going to be moving in that direction. We'll see if that holds up. That could affect the game a little bit. And I'll tell you what, Aaron Rodgers has been having an absolutely wonderful year. I'm torn on all of these, but I think the advantage certainly looks like it goes to Green Bay. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are playing at home. They've got Buffalo flying in. You got 4 of the best top 6 scoring offenses in the NFL playing each other. It says a lot about where the game has moved towards. We've got great quarterbacks, 2 really young quarterbacks, 2 older quarterbacks. I tell you what, the matchups look fantastic. Whatever happens, we're going to have a great Super Bowl in front of us as well. Get educated, understand the derivatives markets, and we'll see you on Monday. Got a double-double on Monday. I got this. I got the noon show, and then I got the 5 o'clock show as well. And we always have those round tables for Market Rebellion as well. Join us for the cocktail hour tonight. Folks, have a great day of trading.